going back to what we were talking about earlier, pivoting to TBI. Let's talk TBI.
Yeah.
First
you
question.
got hit in the head for a living for 18 years?
I didn't. Thank God.
You're an 18 Bravo on a Special Forces ODA your whole entire adult life?
Yeah, so first question I'll ask is, are you comfortable with pledging your brain for Project Enlist so that we can further how TBI, CT, and PTSD is impacting our military?
Yes. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And why?
Some poor doctor in the future is going to be like,
holy shit.
What is wrong with this dude? Yeah. They're going to have some weird things like, how can he function the way that he is functioning with what is going on in his brain? It's going to be fun.
It will be. You're a scientific phenomenon. How and why are you compelled to pledge your brain? What is your experience with TBI?
Yeah.
It's fun. Like, it's not a funny topic, but it's just like, as someone who has clearly experienced so many.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually insane that you are the way that you are.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think back to like being an 18-year-old and Chuck Liddell and Glover Teixeira and Gan McGee and Scott Adams and Eric Childress. These are the who's who of MMA in the late 90s, just beating the living snot out of this 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, becoming a professional fighter at 19. You know, I was driving down to Tijuana and to Indian reservations to do bare knuckle fights in barroom floors, going to New Orleans on Mardi Gras 2000 to do like 10 bare knuckle fights off Bourbon Street in some like dive bar in the basement with a cardboard floor and rope rings. You know, all the way to being an 18 Bravo, going to breacher courses, going to Sephardic, you know, Afghanistan, getting blown up a few times, going to Iraq. Yeah, I don't know how many flashbangs I ate. You know, we're throwing a 9-banger. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Now's the time to go. Like halfway through those bangers, the bangs bouncing around the room. That overpressure is still like making dudes bleed and throw up, and we're just eating it because we're already in our OODA loop. And like, if that guy's in the corner crying like a baby, that's the time I want to be in the room. You know?
Yeah. First point, I think, you know, in all seriousness, like, I think you are all right because of your ability to show vulnerability, your understanding of the things you've been through, and to talk about your experiences and understand that there is injury to your brain. So if something were to happen, you know what it is, right? And you're going to be vulnerable, and you're going to reach out for help, and you're going to go do the things you need to do in order to repair what has. He's on the board of the Concussion Legacy Foundation, a veteran advisory board. We do this thing called Project
I know
Enlist.
what we're going to do. I know what we're getting ready to do. Go ahead. Go ahead and do it. Bring it. I already just said I would. Go ahead.
100%. But I want to tell a story before.
Okay.
Because we talked about it earlier. You talked about Jay Red speaking.
And how I carried him through SEAL training, but that's a whole nother story. No, kidding.
But he was like, I talked to him before. I was reaching out to the veteran advisory board. I was like, hey, Jake, you know, him and I got to talk, and he came to Austin, and we had a great time. We knocked out a podcast, and he bitched out of the workout too, just like yourself. But
wow.
No, I'm playing.
No, it's all good.
But so he was like, hey bro, like, yeah, let's knock out the podcast. And then he did a speaking event here in Austin. He was like, hey, they're going to do this live auction. We're going to donate all the proceeds to the Concussion Legacy Foundation for Project Enlist, which we get into. I was like, oh, that's great, dude. I was like, when are you going to be in Austin? He's like, it's in Austin. I was like, all right, perfect. So got together, and then he texted me. He's like, yeah, so need you to come to the hotel. Mic checks are like 4, and then I speak at like 5. And I was like, all right, cool. Did the podcast. They went on. I was like, wait, why does he need me at mic checks? And I like got to mic checks. He's like, all right, bro, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give my speech, and then you're going to come up in front of this, 1,000 people, and you're going to talk about Project Enlist and the Concussion Legacy Foundation and tell your brother's story. Cool? I was like, bro, what? Like, I haven't had no time to prepare for this. And he's like, I was like, hey, Jay, like I was trying not to show that I was like nervous as hell, right? And I was like, hey, man, like, so you want me to prepare anything? He's like, no, dude, you're good. I was like, I'm really not like prepared. He's like, I got you, bro. I was like, all right, man. But so then he crushes it, right? Amazing public speaker. Everyone's like silent, and he tells a story about why he's involved in the Concussion Legacy Foundation. And this very motivating conversation gets very emotionally very fast. He talked about the people, so the crowd's silent. He goes, "Now I'd like to welcome up a military program manager for Concussion Legacy Foundation, Brad McCartney." I was like, "Oh fuck!" So I'm walking and that was my encounter with Jason. So just to talk about the thing earlier, like I was so damn nervous about that, but I got up there and I told Matt's story, and a lot of people came up and they were like, "Thank you for your vulnerability," and that's always the message I get out there. And that's another example of a time where it's uncomfortable, but you have to embrace it because that could have saved someone's life. Who knows? And then we got to talk to Jason, and now let's you and I talk TBI.
Yeah.
Let's talk TBI. So I'll ask you publicly, just so you know, to pledge your brain to Project Enlist. And if you choose to accept, then I would ask you why. Why is research on brain injuries so important to you, and why are you comfortable pledging your brain, and what's the need for it?
So yes, I accept, and I would love to donate my brain, and it's because I've lost too many of my brothers from the ripple effect of being diagnosed with this. I'm not going to say their names. Me and Jason have some mutual friends who've married SEALs, just, taking their lives, having issues with sleep disorder, this and this. So if my contribution could help save one life after mine's gone, it's no pun intended, it's a no-brainer. And I don't mean that. I'm sorry, I shouldn't even have said that because I'm not trying to make a joke.
I'm going to steal that from you.
It's it would be an honor and it'd be a privilege, and hopefully enough people can see the light in this, and hopefully we can stop this, because there's too many people who have done too many amazing things that are taking their lives. So obviously, your brother's one of them. So we have to do what we can. We have an obligation, we have a responsibility, we have a duty to step up and stop this. So yeah, I mean, Jason asked me that and I was like, fuck yeah, that's what I told him. I mean, just, we've known each other for 20 some years, and he's like, "Listen, I want you to," I'm like, spoke to my wife and she's like, "Yeah, if that can help potentially save one life after you're gone, I'm still carrying on a legacy." And I told you, my legacy, when I do my 22 push-ups, which I know the number is almost like 40 and 44 or something.
And they won't release the numbers.
They won't. Yeah.
Terrifying. Yeah.
But I will leave a legacy. My goal is to get that number to 0, and me donating my brain to just cutting one number down. It's a win-win for me.
Would you be willing to pledge your brain to Project Enlist so that we can further awareness on how brain injuries are impacting the mental health of veterans?
100%. Absolutely. I'm definitely committed to doing that. Specifically, after going through the TBI checks and the brain imaging that I did recently for my hyperbaric chambers treatment, and just to see the impact of not just that blast, but probably years, right? There was other blasts before, and concussions and drop-in things like that, and just, how injured my brain has been, but also the effects of those injuries. And when they connected those about me, like excessiveness, like I'm obsessed. Like I used to get obsessed, like till recently, with my grass in Seattle.
Right.
Like, I mean, every day I'd walk outside and I'll just be like, I'm obsessed. I want to make it perfect. And that's a problem, right? That was a problem. And when we looked at my scans and they did the report, and they're like, that is potentially, I didn't tell them anything about me, right? And they're like, "Well, we see this trait. Are you feeling like, and they went like to the pinpoint. I was like, "Oh my goodness." I was like, yeah.
What one piece of advice would you give them?
I would say, no matter how, don't buy into the lies. Don't buy into the lies that taking your life is going to, it may end your pain, but the problem is it ends it permanently. You have no idea what the future holds. You're making a decision. You're making a permanent decision on really a temporary problem. I mean, and then bigger than that, the impact on the people around you I have just watched it happen again and again. I mean, it really, when you commit suicide, it is like a suicide bomb going off in all directions and impacting the people you love. And it's easy to say, you know, I know there are some out there that say, well, nobody loves me because they're in a really dark place, but that's just not true. And the last side of that is you don't know what the future holds. So I would challenge you to get help. Get help. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be, there is no easy button. Like I said, like I talked about earlier, there are treatments that are out there, and you may try 5 different treatments that don't work for you, but maybe a 6th one does. Right. And there is no magic button. I find guys who think, well, if I do this treatment, it's just going to magically fix me. And that's not the case. Oftentimes it gets you to a place where then you have to continue to work at it, maybe for the rest of your life. But at least it gets you to a stable point where you can have a good life and a new beginning and get out of that deep, dark hole that you're in. So that would be my challenge. My other challenge would be donate your brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Donate your brain. And I know for some people, they're like, man, I don't want to donate my brain, you know, but you don't need it. When you're gone,
you're gone.
You're gone, man.
No matter what you believe in, no matter any of that stuff, you don't need it when you're gone. Like
I mean, we're all going to decompose and go away or whatever it is. I mean, whether you're going to be cremated or whether you're going to be buried in the ground, you don't need your brain. And I just think it's kind of a cool way to give back to, you know, whatever community you come from, especially if you're a veteran. It's a cool way to give back to the veteran community because your brain is going to go into, the brain bank where they're going to look and they're going to know, hey, this guy was a veteran. You know, this guy was a infantryman, or this guy was a Marine, or this guy was a Ranger, whatever it is. And they're going to know, well, he probably was exposed to more blasts or whatever it is. And they'll be able to look at your brain and study it and understand. And maybe someday, you know, we'll be able to prevent these things.
Exactly. And as we talked about earlier, there's this gap right now, and we know not a lot about the brain, and the only way that we can learn about it is if we can study it, and we can study how TBI, how CT is impacting our veterans, how TBI and CT is leading to people taking their life, how it's leading to that switch of personality, that change of a person, and we know that it's true because we've experienced it in so many people, or you experienced so many people. I've experienced it with my brother. And just hearing these stories, I mean, it's true. We just need to be able to see it now, and the way to see it is through research. So, absolutely, pledge your brain, just like J Red did, just like so many different heroes did. And my last question for you, J Red, is, and I ask this to all the guests, but you know, what does the 38 challenge mean to you? What we stand for? What does it mean to you specifically?
I'd say it means honor and sacrifice.
A lot of the military doesn't even know that a concussion is a form of TBI. Yeah. Like they think of TBI as not, obviously your circumstances were extreme, but getting blown up in an ID or a Humvee, that in the military is a lot of the times diagnosed as a concussion, an MTBI. Right. That's a lot different than that high level exposure is a lot different than what other concussions could look like. Sure. There's just no awareness there. Veterans don't, and active military doesn't understand is that. And I always find this correlation fascinating and also incredibly alarming. But as we know, unfortunately, the veteran suicide rate is 50% higher than a regular person and than a civilian. But after one concussion, your chance of suicide doubles. Mm-hmm. It's also 50% higher. A lot of people don't know that. So if you look at the correlation between sometimes the thoughts, the behaviors, the actions, the things that we've been talking about, people who have served and have experienced brain trauma, it doesn't need to be an IED, it doesn't need to be overhead blast. It could be from training, whatever it is. There's an injury to your brain a lot of the times that is causing you to think a certain way or act a certain way, behave a certain way. And we need to spread the awareness on that. Yeah. On that as well.
Yeah. It comes down to, like, you know, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm just a guy.
Me neither. On the record, I'm not a doctor.
I'm just a guy that survived a couple of IEDs, right?
I'm just a guy that gets brains for my job.
And so what for me, it's like, these suicidal ideations, for when we're speaking specifically about TBI, my belief comes from like the loss of dissonance, right? The loss of your ability to cognitively think and use your neocortex in ways that it's supposed to be used to, rationalize, right? When you start, losing that ability to rationalize, then your brain will start doing what it will do, right? Because there's no checks and balances, and then you found yourself, so far down a path that you're looking at a gun, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and you talked about CTE. One of the number one side effects of chronic traumatic encephalopathy and traumatic brain injuries is impulsivity, and it takes 4 pounds of pressure to pull a trigger, and that is a decision you can't take back. So if a side effect of it is making impulse decisions, and like you said, now in my opinion, and again, I'm not a doctor, but I think a lot of the suicides are not premeditated. I don't think there's a lot of times I think there's ideation possibly, but it's not like I have a plan.
Right.
And due to the disease or the injury that you have, it is causing people to act in a certain way. And I think that we need to spread the message that there is an injury to your brain, and you are not, you're not nuts, right? You're not crazy. You're not dealing with these things alone. Like there's an injury, and like any injury of your body, it needs to be addressed. You need to talk about it. You need to go seek help so that we can repair it and so it can function like it's supposed to.
Yeah. Here's one of the things, science is data driven, right? I'm interested in knowing how many American forces were treated for IED related illnesses, or not necessarily IED related impacts that were ambulatory walking. Meaning that there was no damage that taken them off the battlefield, right? And they got blown up, they survived, they're able to go back in.
Yeah.
I want to know those numbers, right? Yep. Because I want to take those numbers and see how many of those people have actually committed suicide in the last 20 years. Because I bet you the number is going to be resoundingly high and scary, because those are the individuals that have probably suffered the most in terms of the loss of dissonance and their ability to check their intrusive thoughts, right? Because of the CT and the damage done to their brains.
Absolutely. And 2 things: number of TBIs since the war on terror, the recent data is 414,000. Number of suicides is 114,000. Yeah. So again, look at the numbers. There's an increase of 84% of individuals taking their in the past couple of years. Individuals in the military taking their lives between the ages of 18 and 34. Again, on record, this is not proven science. This is just me looking at data and numbers. A lot of the time, stage 2 CTE is within that age gap, and it's also. Stage 2 CT is a lot of when the behavioral changes happen, right? When someone does take their life a lot of the times. And it's not all, stage 2 CT is not always between the ages of 18 and 34, but a lot of the times it is. And you're looking at the numbers of suicide increase in that age gap. It's also about the same age when people are developing these behavioral symptoms, which lead to suicide and lead to mental illness.
Yeah.
I mean, we need people to pledge their brains so that we can further the research, so that we can see how brain injuries are impacting our veterans. So
population doesn't seem like it's shrinking anytime soon.
Nope, it did. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Well, actually, one more question for you. And, for the listeners, one of the things we're gonna be doing now is people with athletes or veterans who have experienced brain injuries.
Yes.
We're going to ask them to pledge their brain to Project Enlist, which is, as you know, the other program that I manage.
Yep.
Would you be willing to do that?
100%. I've been next to a lot of explosions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've definitely, hit my head a lot. So I'd be more than happy to. Like I said, I've had a long-standing history with both the Army and a couple different VA offices regarding TBI and being able to fitfully recover from severe brain injuries. So I'd be more than happy to do so.
Hell yeah, man. I think we talked about this. So one of the things on the podcast that we always do when we talk about TBI is we ask the guest to pledge their brain for Project Enlist. I think we might have talked about that. I don't know if I don't know if we were. Are you comfortable with doing that?
Yeah, I am. If anybody wants my brain, I always have.
I think you'd be a prime candidate.
Anything that would help other people, I'm all about it. I'm already an organ donor anyway, but yeah, I would definitely take that pledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's especially in the special operations community, we're seeing all these legends of war, right? And there's movies about them and like yourself and books and all these things, and for them to pledge and to spread awareness, right, is I think so important. So I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll help a lot of people. Well, let's talk TBI. Jen, we had a long conversation as well. But yeah, so I founded the 38 Challenge, but I also run the military programs for Concussion Legacy Foundation. So I run a project or a program called Project Enlist, and what we're trying to do is to spread awareness on how brain injuries are impacting our warriors. Because as we've talked about in this conversation, to deal with losing Bob or to come home and to transition out, right, and to be placed into this new environment that you're not used to and you're afraid of, you have to do all that with a brain that's injured. And not a lot of people understand that their brain is injured, right? They think that they're dealing with these things, that they think that it's them, that they're crazy, right? Or that they're
weak, or
they're weak, or it's just them, exactly. But there are psychological, cognitive, behavioral changes to your mind that literally are the reason behind a lot of these actions. It's the reason behind a lot of suicide. After one concussion, one MTBI, your chances of suicide doubles after one. So imagine the amount of TBI in the military, right? Injury on injury on injury to the brain that you just can't see. So, Tom, what's been your experience with TBI?
Exactly that. The lack of understanding of what's wrong with me. Why do I think the things I think? Why do I behave the way I behave? Guys feel broken. One of the best things that has happened to us was we had a brain scan going up to Chicago before we had a Stella shot. Like, I wanted to scan your brain before and after the shot. Yeah, sure, whatever. You run through these tests that piss you off. You take it. I mean, you're doing them wrong. You're trying so hard to do it right, and you get so pissed off. And I'm like, I get it. You're pissing me off. So you're going to read my brain when I'm angry. And then you go in and do an MRI, and then you get the shot. Then you get another shot. Then you come back and do the scans again. And the difference was amazing. And some doctor from Hollywood called. Had never met me. I don't even know if he knew I was in the military or not. He just knew there was a brain scan. 2 days apart. And they were so different. And he described.
This is after stellate?
What's that?
This is after stellate?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And it was a 2-day process. And your brain scan, shot, brain scan, in 2 days. He said, I've never seen this much difference in a brain. He said, do you do this? Do you do that? Do you have outbursts? Do you say things that you're like, oh, I can't believe I'm saying this to you, but I'm still saying it to you, And like, God, why can't I stop myself? And like, that's it. Do you go from like zero to rage? Yep, that's it. Do you have this? Do you have that? I'm like, my God, this guy is describing me perfectly by looking at the colors of my brain on his scan. Because we can fix this with stuff. And I go, I'm not taking drugs, doc. No more. He goes, no, it's all natural. Amazon stuff. Here, buy it off Amazon. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. And then you get a hyperbaric chamber, and you do that, and then we'll do another scan, and we'll see how you're doing. We no longer call it the invisible wounds of war because you can see it, you can heal it, you can take care of it, minimize it, and fix a lot of things. So,
and also,
it gives up a lot of hope for people who were previously terrified to be diagnosed and have it and wonder, what do I do now?
To understand it's an injury. It's not a matter of willpower or weakness or anything else that gets assigned to some of these behaviors. It's an injury. And so I think for Tom, I watched his eyes tear up as this doctor saying the things he's saying, because for Tom for so long, he's like, why can't I control this? Why can't I control that?
It's like, I've never been like this before. She thinks I've been this way my whole life. So you start thinking that she thinks I'm just mean, always mean to people and say the weirdest shit. Like, no, I promise I don't do that, But you're doing it. And it's hard when you do things that you don't want to do.
The frustration of, I forget things, and then the embarrassment or the shame that gets attached to it from TBI. And, I'm supposed to be this super sharp warfighter, and I can't remember things. And like you said, the suicidal ideation, that was something that was never explained to us ever, was that due to his concussions and concussed brain, that, he's at least twice as likely to have suicidal ideation, and to understand that's part of the injury as well. I mean, nobody ever told him that or explained that to him.
Yeah, and if you look at all the issues within the veteran community, right, a lot of them come down to behaviors and decisions. And so what's not well known in the veteran community, which our goal is to make it well known and to continue to get brains so we can further the research, so we can create the same community that's in the NFL and football. CTE is running rampant within our veterans, and it's because it's caused by repetitive head impacts or repetitive traumatic brain injuries. But what is defined as a TBI, like in the military, a lot of people think TBI, like you have to be, in Black Hawk Down, right?
Right.
This, like, that's not like there's subconcussive blasts are still TBI, right? If you, like you said, in training, right? People die in training, breaching, right? And even shooting assault rifles and having this low-level blast exposure, all these can create injuries to the brain. And it's not, sometimes you can't see it, and sometimes it's not a diagnosed TBI, but it doesn't mean you're not impacted by the effects of it. So side effects include impulsivity, right? So making impulse decisions. I don't think my brother's suicide was premeditated. I think it was an impulse decision because of the demons that those voices in his head, right? Because it wasn't functioning or firing how it should have been, right? And things like aggression, right? Things, one of the things that's always described is that change in behavior and mood that can go from 0 to 100 really quick. And I saw all these things in my brother but it wasn't made aware to me, and it wasn't made aware to him. And on his computer, before he died, one of the last things he researched was Junior Seau, who died from CTE, and what happened to Junior Seau's family. So what we have to do is we have to spread awareness that there is hope, right? Because my brother knew that he was dealing with brain injuries, and he was terrified by what his life would become. And so our message is that there are things out there that can help you, right? You can take control of your life, do things like meditation, go seek help, have therapy. You can start to slowly but surely repair the brain. And then we need to work together to be able to provide and further research on these treatments like stellate, like hyperbaric, like, plant medicine, psychedelics, all these things, right? We need to continue to spread awareness and research and funding for them so we can help veterans now.
100%.
Yeah, remove that fear and the stigma of like psychedelics, the new drugs, the new technologies that those are illegal. Don't do, okay, alcohol's legal, marijuana's not. I don't know if marijuana's legal or not anymore. I can't tell anymore. Federally, it's okay now. I don't know, but who knows? But a lot of those things are helping, and we have to be on the tip of the spear for those treatments and things like that.
Right, and if it doesn't matter what it is, like if eating that plant saves your life, then do it.
Eat the plant.
Yeah, eat the plant. Like there should be no stigma. Like
my friends might judge me if I eat that plant, but you'll be alive.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't want to be judged.
Yeah. Your friends are gonna. There'd be a lot more sad if you're dead than if you eat that plant.
100%.
And one of the only ways we can get research is for people to pledge their brain, donate their brain.
Yep.
I know you and I have had this conversation before, but would you be comfortable pledging your brain to Project Enlist?
Absolutely.
Cool. And why is that?
I think it's important for the future. If I'm able to provide some sort of new information because I give my brain up, then I'm more than willing and completely happy to do that. I don't need it anymore once I'm gone.
Thank you, but I'll give you this card then.
Yeah.
And so, thank you for pledging.
Of course.
And to listeners, you can pledge your brain at projectenlist.org, because the future is filled with hope.
I think.
Hell yeah. 2 more questions for you.
Cool.
One, we spoke before the podcast about Project Enlist and pledging. Obviously, you've experienced IEDs or concussions, I'm sure, throughout your military career. So I would ask you if you would be willing to pledge your brain to Project Enlist in order to spread awareness on how brain injuries are impacting our veterans.
Absolutely, yes. I think it's an important cause. I think it's if any way, shape, or form that I can be a part and help with this, absolutely would be honored to. And it is an important part of all this is understanding and fixing these issues, and that these injuries are real and they affect you, and these things are affecting a lot of folks. So let's try to understand it more, and let's try to do what we can to help some folks out that have, these type of problems.
Absolutely, brother. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And I appreciate you too, honestly, like, these to me are what this is about, these type of things. And your type of podcast, it's genuine, it's organic, it's and like I said, for again, a 22-year-old young man, it's cool to see that, and what you stand for, and what you're putting out there. So you're gonna do great things. I can tell you that right now.
Thank you very much, brother.
Do great things. You got that.